Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1980 spoof parody film, Airplane. Airplane is one of those films that is widely considered to be one of the greatest comedies ever made, one of the best films from the 1980s. And it's a film that I do like, but I've never loved. I just did not find this film to be as compelling or as consistently hilarious as other people do. That being said, I do have fun with it, and I do think it's a good movie, and I do think that it is, for the most part, genuinely worthy of its status in film history. And in large part, it's really due to the fact that this was like the first of the spoof films of its type, and it's the first that really was massively successful financially and critically. So, because of that, you have a lot of films that have Airplane to thank for their existence. And you could definitely see the inspiration in those movies when it comes to this film. So it's one of those movies where I don't necessarily agree entirely with the critical consensus of it, but it's still a film that I really appreciate for what it is and what it has done for the genre that it's a part of. But before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on Airplane, though, I would like to give a special shout out to Sean for requesting this review. Airplane is a collaborative effort. It's a film that's directed by Jim Abrams, David Zucker, and Jerry Zucker. And the three of them also wrote the film. And the direction for Airplane is kind of hard to talk about because it's intentionally bad and tongue in cheek. Like the directors intentionally shot the film in a way where it looks like a B movie. Like that was the intent from the very beginning. And they definitely succeeded in doing that. There are quite a number of shots that look straight up amateurish, but that's the whole point. And it adds to the authenticity of the movie being like a B grade film. But I do feel that the three directors deserve a little more credit than just successfully recreating a bad movie when it comes to their direction, because the way that they frame the sight gags in particular is really impressive. And a lot of the sight gags in this would not be as funny if it wasn't for the way that they were framed. For instance, when Ted Stryker is telling this elderly passenger a story about his past, after he's done, the camera pans up and shows the hanging body of the elderly woman who was listening to Stryker. And the way that that shot is framed is a big part of why that gag is so funny. And there's a lot of other moments in this film that involve like goofy, silly stuff or slapstick or dark comedy that, because of the way that the three directors frame those shots, the comedy was really able to be emphasized rather strongly. And it really showcased the fact that the directors had a really good sense of timing, comic timing, when it comes to their visuals and the way that they approached directing the film. So I definitely have to give them their props overall for their direction of Airplane. But at the same time, it is a movie that is intentionally trying to be kind of bad. So because of that, there's a lot of directing in it that is a bit rough around the edges, but that's the entire point. So it's not something that I think is worth harshly criticizing because it's one of those things where like that's just the point. That's exactly what they were trying to do. The screenplay, on the other hand, which a lot of people consider to be near perfect or just great the way that it is, I have more issues with that. To me, the script is a mixed bag. And that is not a popular opinion at all. And I am definitely aware of that. I'm expecting a lot of people to agree to disagree when it comes to my takes on this film, and specifically the screenplay by the Zucker brothers and Jim Abrams. Before I really kind of get into my biggest critiques of it, though, I want to mention the things about it that I think are genuinely great. For one, I think the way that it juxtaposes the serious nature of the airplane disaster genre with silly stuff is really well executed by these writers. They did a good job making it seem like it was a contrast that added to the effectiveness of the script and to the film, and not something that was a distraction or something that was a detriment to it. So, and that's definitely not an easy tone to really land, and I think they did a good job landing that tone. I also feel that there are some really clever bits of comedy all throughout this screenplay. And to me, they're really in three categories. So, one of the categories is just straight up dark comedy, like the repeated gag of people who have the misfortune of listening to Stryker and his stories killing themselves. That is such a dark, twisted gag, but it's absolutely hilarious. The other sort of dark comic gags, like the gag with the hysterical woman who is getting smacked in order for her to snap out of it. But then there's like a line of people who are ready to hit her even harder and even more. Like that is really messed up if you think about it. But the way that it's set up, the way that the joke ultimately lands, it's easily one of the film's more memorable jokes. And it was all Lee Bryant, the actress who played that character. She was the one that came up with the idea to have this long line of people smacking her around. So that's not necessarily something that I think is entirely due to the writing because it was an improvisation bit. It was something that the actress brought to the table. But I definitely wanted to mention that when it comes to the dark comedy because it is one of the more well-known dark comic bits. Um, Another one for me that definitely cracks me up is during Stryker's flashback when he's talking about the night that he met Elaine. There's just this continued running gag of these Girl Scouts who are just beating the ever loving crap out of each other. And it's dark, and it in another context it would just not be that funny, but the way that it's set up, it's really hilarious. And so is the stuff involving the Captain Over, and the his infatuation with boys. Like that is something that in any other context would just be considered to be wrong and not funny. But the way that it's written, the way that it's performed by Peter Graves, it's absolutely laugh out loud hilarious. The whole repeated gag of him just being inappropriate with these with this kid that's in the cockpit. Hey, have you ever seen a grown man naked? It's just like it's just really dark and messed up because really what it is, it's a pedo joke. But the way that it's handled is really funny. I have to give the writers a lot of credit for that and being willing to be daring enough to go there in the first place. And it's not just the dark comedy that really works though with this script though. Uh, the crass and like raunchy humor also works quite well most of the time. The whole repeated gag with the autopilot and the scene when Elaine has to give him head essentially to blow him back up. And then he has a big smile on his face afterwards, and they are smoking cigarettes. Like that is so ridiculous and over the top raunchy, but just the way that it's established and the way that the comedy is showcased, it's comedy gold. It genuinely is. And the same thing goes for like that scene involving the two kids who are acting like they're a married couple, and the stewardess walks up to one of the kids, the girl, and asks her, how she'd like her coffee, and she's like, I want I want it black like my men. You're just like, Jesus Christ. That's so wrong, but funny. And the other aspect of comedy that I think this script really nails is the puns. So a lot of there's a ton of dialogue in this that are just very pun forward, and the puns themselves, if you just look at them on paper, they honestly kind of look lame. They're dad jokes. They really are. But because of the way that they're inserted into the script and the way that the actors say these lines, it becomes something that is just instantly iconic. That's why one of the most memorable lines in the movie is a pun, where you have Leslie Nielsen's character, the doctor, Dr. Rumick, and I believe it's Ted who's talking to him, and he's saying something along the lines of, "Surely you can't be serious." And then the doctor's like, "I am serious, and don't call me Shirley." It's so dumb. It's such a dumb, lame pun, but the way that it's utilized, the way that the actors say the line, it becomes genuinely gut-bustingly funny. So those are, in my opinion, where Airplane really soars when it comes to the comedy, is when it comes to those specific kinds of jokes and gags. The sight gags are fun at points too, but honestly, I think it's better when it comes to the dark comedy or the puns or the crass jokes. I really think that's where the bulk of the film's best laughs come from. I mean, the whole scene with the uh, stewardess who's singing the song on the guitar, and she's so oblivious and so caught up in singing this song that she doesn't notice that the sick girl is dying because her IV got pulled out. Like, that is, in my opinion, where Airplane is at its best, and when it really sticks the landing. Now, Other aspects of it that I feel were pretty good, I would say the characters. I think the writers did a good job establishing the characters and their importance when it comes to the plot and their backstory, especially Ted and Elaine, and giving them their moments to really leave a lasting impression for the most part. Some characters are definitely stronger than others, but I think for the most part, the characters that wind up having the most screen time, they are well written. So they're written well enough that you genuinely care about them and you want them to make it through this airplane disaster alive. So that definitely is something that helps with the film's suspense or tension or its overall intrigue. But for me personally, where Airplane doesn't necessarily wind up having um, the smoothest flight and has some genuine turbulence is other aspects of the script. For one, the plot I think is honestly really uninteresting and not really that compelling. It's a straight up copy of the 50s film Zero Hour, to the point where they actually had to credit Zero Hour in the credits and the writers of that film. And it's not just copying a line or two. There are entire plot points that are copied from that film and entire characters. That to me is honestly kind of lazy when it comes to the writing. I don't think copying Zero Hour really helps it. A lot of people like that aspect of it. They think that it helps it, it makes it more unique. And I'm like, how does it make it more unique if it's literally just the same movie for the most part, with just some silly stuff and some other gags thrown in as a pre existing film? And it's not just that contributes to Airplane's script being a mixed bag for me. It's also the fact that this genre, the genre of airplane disaster movies, it was already a parody of itself by the time Airplane came out. Look no further than something like Concorde, Airport 79. That movie is so over the top and stupid and dumb and ridiculous, and it's honestly, in my opinion, just as funny as Airplane, if not funnier, because of the fact that it's all played straight. That's what the airplane disaster genre really was already at by the time Airplane came out. And not only that, that's where the disaster movies were. The disaster movies were getting more and more ridiculous and more over the top and more of a parody of themselves. And Airplane comes along and just does more of the same. I don't really think that there was a whole lot more that Airplane could do because the genre was already ridiculous and silly as it was. So I think that was limiting in a way. Another thing that limited it was the setting. It tried to work around it with flashbacks with Stryker, but I don't think it necessarily did the best job with that either, unless you talk about the night that he met Elaine. Because the other flashbacks, in my opinion, were not very well written and not very well done or really that interesting. And because of the limitations, there's only so much you can do inside of a cramped airplane. So that's definitely something that definitely hurt the film and its plot for me as well. And another thing that hurt it was honestly some of the jokes, some of the comedy. It's not really something that holds up that well if you don't have the context. And even if you do, it's not really necessarily as funny as I think the writers thought that it was. For instance, one of the first jokes deals with loading zones, and these two voices on a loudspeaker bickering with one another, and then they ultimately talk about an abortion. And to me, it was just more weird and random than it was necessarily funny. And even when I knew the context of it, which is that was a real thing. there really were voices on the loudspeaker, male and female voices that would say the exact same things. And Airplane actually wound up hiring the same voice actors, the same people who did the voiceovers, and they were actually a married couple. But even knowing that, it still isn't something I would consider to be that funny. It's more strange than anything else. And there's a handful of moments in Airplane that are like that. They're just random and strange. And to me, that's not my cup of tea. That's not my personal favorite type of comedy. And the fact that this has a good chunk of moments like that in it, it really made it so there were way more moments in this comedy that didn't make me laugh than I would have honestly personally like. It's not just the loading zone bit, it's other random, dumb bits like the smoking and non-smoking. Oh, he asked for smoking, they give him a ticket that's actually smoking. Or you have the whole thing with Stryker's drinking problem. Oh, he has a drinking problem, but it's not that he's got an alcohol addiction. He can't actually drink things. I'm like, okay, all right. Or repeated gags that just got stale after a while. The jive talk thing to me, I'm like, so it's supposed to be funny because you have a couple African Americans and you don't understand what they're saying because they're speaking jive. And I'm like, okay, all right. And there's a white lady who translates their language for other people on the plane. And it's supposed to be funny because it's the same white lady who played the mom in Leave It to Beaver. It's just one of those things where I'm like, all right, I get it, but I don't think it's that funny. I don't think it's that laugh out loud hilarious. The repeated gags with this character Johnny, who's just going around doing random nonsense in the air traffic control room. A lot of people love this character. They think this character is comic gold. They think this character is the film's MVP. I respectfully disagree. I never found the character to be funny. It was just another example of just random, weird, nonsensical of stuff that this script is full of. Like, oh, I can make a hat. And Leon is getting larger and prancing around the air traffic control room and doing all kinds of randomness. And it didn't really tap into my personal sense of humor. Or random cutaway gags, like a gag with a woman's in bed with a horse. I'm like, okay, she's in bed with a horse because it's a bestiality joke? Like, what is funny about that? Or the whole thing with Stryker when he's talking about another flashback where he and Elaine were in a jungle and he teaches or he shows the jungle natives the sport of basketball, and all of them are really good at basketball because they're black. Like, like, I mean, it's not that it's a joke that's aged badly. It's not a good joke. It's just not funny. I don't see what's so funny about, oh, they're all black and they're all really good at basketball because they're black. Like, I don't really see how that's funny. It's just one of those movies where the screenplay has some choice cuts and quotes that are hilarious and still are really funny today, but then it has a good handful of other moments that aren't as funny. There are things about it that I really, really like, and then there's other things about it that I didn't really care for that much. That's my thoughts on the screenplay for Airplane. Now, the cast I think is great. I think the cast is a huge part of why this film has some genuine air miles. You know, it's still a film that has some good air mileage because of the direction, the best jokes, and this cast. I mean, Robert Hayes, in my opinion, he does a really good job as Ted Stryker, who's essentially one of the many straight guys. You know, one of the many characters that is just playing things straight, despite all of the silliness going on around them. And I think Robert Hayes has a good sense of the kind of character that he's playing. He's charming, charismatic in his own way, but he's also got some good comic timing and some good deadpan all of his own. Julie Hagerty is mousy, uh, but also genuinely sexy and gorgeous, and really does a good job playing both sides of that character, and does some good physical comedy as well, and has some really good chemistry with Robert Hayes. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has a fun cameo as Roger Murdoch. Lloyd Bridges is great as Steve McCroskey. You know, I picked the wrong week to stop sniffing glue. Peter Graves as Over. He is really funny in this. Even though he's playing really a creep, his character is a total creep. Like he's creeping on kids. that's the that's the one of his main things. That's one of the main gags for this character. He just creeps on a kid. But Graves just plays it so straight that it winds up being pretty hilarious and pretty funny. And I know Graves initially didn't want anything to do with this movie. He was offered it and he turned it down, and then he kept getting offered it and he was like, I don't get it, cuz I think this is just a crass, stupid, offensive film. I don't want anything to do with this. And it wasn't until Robert Stack and Leslie Nielsen and other actors like that joined the cast, and they essentially sold it on him when he eventually did sign on. And then when he started shooting the movie and he saw the film, then it clicked for him. And he was really glad that he did it. Speaking of Leslie Nielsen, he steals every scene that he's in this as Dr. Rumick. He might as well be the film's MVP. Like, he's the legitimate MVP to me. And this is the first time that Leslie played a comedy role like this. And it's the role that essentially established him as a comedy juggernaut for years to come. And it was an unexpected, risky kind of role for him. He was just expecting to get nothing but grandpa roles for the rest of his career until he got Airplane and he played this role and he did such a great job saying these puns in such a straightforward manner that it became uh, really popular. And that's what led to him getting work like the Naked Gun movies and so on. And I, I I definitely feel that regardless of how I might feel about the film as a whole, I have so much appreciation for Airplane, for it being this launching pad for Leslie Nielsen's comedy career. And then you have some other actors and actresses that were fun too. Robert Stack, the man, the myth, the legend, as Captain Rex Kramer. It was a lot of fun to see Robert Stack play it straight in this silly parody movie. The scene when he has to karate chop and fend off all of these people who are trying to sell him shit at the airport is honestly one of the funniest moments in the entire movie. And a big part of it is just Robert Stack and his physical comedy. And yeah, Stack is the man. And it was definitely a good role for him. There was a lot for him to really work with when it comes to his role in this. And Steven Stucker, a lot of people really like him, think he's great. I'm not one of them. I never really cared for his performance. His was over the top. and scenery chewing, to be honest. Where the other actors, other than Lloyd Bridges, when he's progressively more and more manic after, all the things start going wrong when it comes to the plane landing. But other than the stuff, those moments with Lloyd Bridges, most of the time he's playing it straight. But Henshaw Jacobs, played by Steven Stucker, the guy is just constantly just an oddball throughout the entire movie. There are some other people worth mentioning, like Lorna Patterson, who played Randy, the singing stewardess. Barbara Billingsley, Leave It to Beaver mom as the Jive lady. Lee Bryant as Miss Hammond. Nicholas Pryor as Jim Hammond. Lee was actually the same actress who was in that coffee commercial, by the way, as well, which I thought was kind of interesting. Uh, you've got other people like Norman Alexander Gibbs as the first Jive dude. Al White is the second Jive dude. Al White is a guy you might recognize. He was the dad who was living in Marty's house in Back to the Future Part 2 in the alternate 1985. So I think that's definitely a fun, memorable role for him. David Leisure, Joe Azuzu himself, he was in this as one of the Krishnas. Uh, Jimmy Walker as a little cameo, as a windshield wiper man. You also have James Hong, Lo Pan from Big Trouble in Little China. He was in this as like a Japanese general who winds up Harry Carrying himself because he can't stand listening to Stryker for any longer than he has to. Uh, so yeah, for the most part, I think it's definitely a good, well-rounded cast. And a big part of what makes Airplane work is that you have all these actors like Lloyd Bridges, Peter Graves, and Leslie Nielsen and Robert Stack that are playing it straight. They're just saying their lines in the most straight way possible. There's no tongue-in-cheek dialogue delivery going on here. There's no trying to be funny. And this would be a much different movie if Bill Murray or some of these other comedians were actually in the cast. And I think it would have been worse because you wouldn't have the same dynamic anymore. The film features some cinematography by Joseph B. Rock that's not terrible, but it's also not particularly amazing. But that's also another thing that is done intentionally. You don't want the film to have cinematography that looks like it's Oscar worthy with direction that's kind of all over the place. Uh, so the cinematography is in really the same boat. The editing is more of the same by Patrick Kennedy. But I do think Patrick Kennedy, he deserves some extra kudos for the way that he edited some of the sight gags and some of the jokes and some of the funnier scenes in the film. And the music by Elmer Bernstein, he was tasked with making a score that just sounded like it's from a bad movie. And I think for the most part, he succeeds in doing that. But because it's Elmer Bernstein, he still creates a piece of music that's still really memorable and really strong, which is the main theme for Airplane. So he still couldn't make something that was entirely bad, even though that was the intention and even though that was what he was paid to do. And I definitely have to admit that the shorter runtime really does help this movie. So if this was any longer than some of the patches where it's kind of boring and the jokes don't really land as much, that really would have been something that would have made it more of a slog. But the way that it is, it still goes by at a pretty quick enough pace. And there's enough about Airplane that's well done, well written, and funny enough that it's still an entertaining watch. But anyway, thanks for watching my review of Airplane, and as always, I'll see you later. See ya.